Behind the tall iron gates of a quiet Louisiana neighborhood, Kevin Gates's estate stands as a surprising blend of Southern charm and spiritual depth. Every corner of his home tells a story of discipline, prayer, and peace, hidden behind the energy of his bold lyrics. Today, we step inside the world of this rap philosopher, his home, his cars, his way of living, and trace the journey that built him. To understand the sanctuary he now calls home, we have to return to where it all began. Kevin Gates was born on February 5, 1986 in Louisiana, and grew up in Baton Rouge, a city that shaped both his struggles and his strength. His childhood was marked by hardship. With an absent father and limited opportunities, Gates was drawn to the streets at a young age. By 13, he had already faced his first arrest, a moment that foreshadowed the turbulence to come. Yet, even within that chaos, there was curiosity. Gates showed early interest in psychology, philosophy, and above all, music. By his late teens, he was recording mixtapes in small Baton Rouge studios, where his raw voice and brutally honest lyrics set him apart. In 2007, Gates signed with Dead Game Records, joining local icons Boozy Badazz and Webby in building the city's distinctive Southern hip-hop identity. His storytelling reflected both pain and purpose, blending confessional verses with the swagger of street survival. But just as his rise began, life intervened. In 2008, Gates was sentenced to prison, a devastating pause that would ultimately become his rebirth. Behind bars, Gates transformed. Instead of sinking into bitterness, he studied relentlessly, earning a master's degree in psychology. This education gave him insight that would later define his music, not as a rapper chasing fame, but as a philosopher interpreting pain. When he walked out of prison in 2011, Kevin Gates was a changed man, sharper, calmer, and determined to take control of his own story. His next steps would turn that determination into destiny. When Kevin Gates stepped out of prison in 2011, the air outside felt different, sharper, more intentional. He wasn't the same man who had walked in years before. The anger that once fueled his decisions had turned into focus. The streets of Baton Rouge still buzzed with the same tension, but Gates had outgrown them. He was ready to build a legacy. He dove straight into music. That same year, he released Make 'Em Believe, a mixtape that would reintroduce him to the world. His lyrics were raw but disciplined. Each verse sounded like a confession wrapped in wisdom. He didn't just rap about crime or struggle anymore. He rapped about choices, mental battles, and redemption. The authenticity of his message began attracting attention. It wasn't long before Atlantic Records noticed the Louisiana poet with a hustler's tone and a philosopher's mind. His energy was different, not flashy, not desperate, but deeply grounded. Gates wasn't trying to fit into hip-hop, he was bending it around his own truth. By 2013, the Luca Brasi story dropped and changed everything. It was his breakthrough. The mixtape captured everything he had become: loyal, spiritual, and brutally honest. The name, borrowed from the loyal enforcer in The Godfather, symbolized Gates's values: respect, silence, and strength. Songs like IDGT, I Don't Get Tired, became anthems of motivation, especially for those who saw pain as a form of power. Then came his first studio album, Isla, in 2016, named after his daughter, meaning to improve in Arabic. The title wasn't just symbolic, it was a declaration of healing. Every track felt like a prayer layered over bass, his way of cleansing the past while celebrating growth. The album debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200, proving that Gates's story had reached far beyond Louisiana. But even in success, Gates remained private, grounded, and disciplined. Fame didn't distract him, it sharpened him. While others bragged about money and fame, Gates talked about energy, loyalty, and self-awareness. He treated music like therapy, his lyrics like scriptures. Still, beneath that calm surface, Gates knew the battle wasn't over. His transformation had drawn him out of the streets, but life had more tests waiting, ones that would shake even his newfound peace. By 2017, Kevin Gates had become a household name. His music topped charts, his face filled festival screens, and his voice carried through radios from Louisiana to London. But while the world saw a man on top, Gates was fighting silent battles that fame couldn't fix. His past hadn't vanished. It was shadowing him. Old charges, legal complications, and the weight of his street history kept pulling him back into chaos. In October 2016, just as Isla's success was peaking, a viral incident from a concert in Florida changed everything. Gates was sentenced to 180 days in jail after an onstage altercation, a decision that dimmed his rising star for a moment. But when he was set to walk free in 2017, another warrant from Illinois surfaced, tied to a gun charge from years prior. Instead of returning home to his wife Drecka and their children, Gates found himself back behind bars. For many artists, this would have been the end. But for Gates, it became another lesson in patience and perspective. Inside those walls, he didn't complain or crumble. He read, meditated, and prayed. He called Drecka often, their bond becoming the anchor that kept him steady. She managed his business, released music on his behalf, and spoke openly about his transformation. Not as a rapper trapped in a system, but as a man learning spiritual endurance. When Gates finally walked out in January 2018, his smile was calm, almost prophetic. He didn't speak of revenge or frustration, just freedom and focus. He had learned that peace was not something the world gave, it was something you built inside yourself. Still, the reintegration wasn't easy. Fame had evolved while he was gone. New sounds, new names, new rules. But Gates didn't chase trends. He doubled down on authenticity, recording music that felt like journal entries from his soul. Tracks like Had To and Change Lanes showed a different side of him, reflective, mature, and emotionally grounded. He wasn't trying to prove he was tough anymore. He was proving he was wise. Yet, even in his peace, he could feel the storm never truly leaves. It only changes shape. His next chapter would test his faith, his marriage, and his purpose in ways even prison hadn't. By 2019, Kevin Gates had reemerged as more than a rapper. He was a man rebuilding his temple from the inside out. Every interview, every lyric, every public moment reflected one message: discipline. His life had become a study in balance between fame and faith, strength and serenity. He started his days before dawn, working out like a soldier. Fitness wasn't about looks, it was spiritual armor. He trained in silence, pushing his body to match the discipline of his mind. Meditation followed. He'd sit in stillness for long stretches, eyes closed, breathing slow, letting his thoughts pass like clouds. For Gates, peace was no longer a luxury. It was survival. Drecka, his wife and business partner, became his mirror. Calm, grounded, and spiritual in her own right. Together, they built a lifestyle rooted in clean eating, herbal medicine, and mindful living. They often shared moments from their farm, surrounded by animals and nature, a sharp contrast to the chaos of Baton Rouge's streets. In his music, this evolution was impossible to ignore. Songs like I'm Him and Walls Talking revealed a man reflecting on the cost of enlightenment. He wasn't afraid to speak about depression, mistakes, and the struggle to remain righteous in a corrupt world. His voice carried pain, but also prayer. Fans began to see him not just as an artist, but as a teacher, someone who turned pain into philosophy. Gates often spoke about energy, self-mastery, and the power of sexual discipline. To many, these ideas were surprising coming from a rapper, but to Gates, it was natural. He had learned that mastering the body and mind was the only path to freedom. He also embraced his Muslim faith with humility, often quoting scripture and reminding his followers to seek truth over approval. "I'm not trying to be perfect," he once said, "I'm trying to be pure." Still, while the outside world saw peace, Kevin knew his inner battles weren't over. He had conquered the prison of the body, but the prison of the mind, the whispers of doubt and the weight of fame were waiting in the shadows. The next phase of his life would push his spirituality to its limit, forcing him to choose between isolation and the world that built him.